been talking about the parable of Minas, or better still, the foundation of this series of conversations we've been having is the parable of Minas that we find in the Bible in Luke chapter 19. And according to that parable, there are three types of people on earth. There are three types of people on earth. We have the high flyer, we have the mediocre, and we have the flop. The high flyer, the mediocre, the flop. The high flyer is an outstanding achiever. The mediocre is that person that is not very good, but not very bad. And the flop is the outright failure. Now, the major difference between these three types of people is in their thinking and their habits. I'm summarizing some of the lessons we've extracted from the parable of Minas. There are three types of people. Okay, the high flyer, the mediocre, and the flop. The difference between them is the way they think and the way they behave. Or let me say it this way: their thinking and their habits. That's the difference. Their thinking and their habits. Now, the good news is you can choose your type. It does not matter how you feel now or how you are performing right now. You can shift from a flop to a high flyer. Okay, you can shift from a flop to a high flyer. What does that take? Consistent exposure to correct information and practice. Consistent exposure to the right information, consistent practice of the right principles will make you experience a shift. Even if you are a flop, you can make a shift from a flop to a high flyer. I'm reminded of the story of a Ghanaian I heard about so many years ago. This man, by the age of 35, was uneducated. At the age of 35, he decided to go to school. So he started primary one at 35. Guess what? At 50, he had a PhD. He started at 35 and at 50, he had a PhD. What does that tell you? It's not too late to turn in the right direction. It's not too late to make the right choices and to do the right things with your life. And that's why we're talking about the checklist. Time will not permit me to cover quite a number of the things we've talked about before now, but this is certain. There are 5 essential elements of achievement, and I'm going to remind you of them tonight. 5 essential elements of achievement. The first is clarity of purpose. The second is quality of thought. The third is a detailed plan of action. The fourth is focused execution. The fifth is the investment of time. We have talked about clarity of purpose. We've talked about quality of thought, and I will encourage you, if you miss any of those sessions, you can go to my YouTube channel. Just search for Segun Oke on YouTube, and you will be able to catch up with all that we have covered before now. Tonight, we're going to talk about a detailed plan of action, and next week, Wednesday, we're going to look at the investment of time. Of course, you know all of this is a build-up to the checklist seminar coming up on the 2nd of November. And what I'm doing in this series of sessions we're having is I'm throwing out content from previous editions of the checklist seminar. Some of the things I'm sharing here are the kind of things we talk about at the checklist seminar. The reason why I'm giving out all of this content free of charge is because at this edition of the seminar, we are coming up with fresh content. Okay, we're throwing out fresh content at this edition of the checklist seminar. So if you are yet to register, we have roughly about 10 seats left. If you are interested in any of those 10 seats, you can please go ahead, register right now so that you don't lose your slot. All you have to do is respond to this live broadcast with the word yes, and the link will be waiting for you in your DM. So go ahead. If you have not registered for the checklist, go ahead and do that right away. I said tonight I will be talking about a detailed plan of action. In Proverbs chapter 21 and verse 5, the Bible says that good planning and hard work lead to prosperity, but hasty shortcuts lead to poverty. Let me read it again. Good planning and hard work lead to prosperity, but hasty shortcuts lead to poverty. What's the lesson here? That it is good planning followed by hard work that leads to prosperity. Hard work is good, but hard work is only meaningful or valuable after good planning. Alex Mackenzie said that action without planning is the cause of every failure. And I see people do this all the time. Action without planning, according to Alex Mackenzie, is the cause of every failure. Now, what is a plan? A plan is a method of doing something that is worked out in advance. Let me say it again. A plan is a method of doing something that is worked out in advance. If you've been listening to me for quite a while, you would have heard this quote I'm about to share with you at least over 10 times. It's the words of Alan Lakin when he said that planning is bringing the future into the present so that you can do something about it now. Planning is bringing what? The future into the present so that you can do something about it now. Now listen to this. A good plan is made up of two things: goals and strategies. A good plan is made up of two things: goals and strategies. What is a goal? A goal is what you intend to achieve. What is a strategy? A strategy is a series of practical steps you intend to take to achieve your goal. When the two of them are present and they are placed on a realistic timeline, that is when you have a plan. It's very simple. You see, it's not that we don't know these things, but we don't practice these things. Let me go over it again. A goal is what you intend to achieve. A strategy, these are the series of steps you intend to take so that you can achieve your goal. When you bring your goal and your strategies together on a realistic timeline, and at the end of our time together tonight, I'm going to show you, a visual timeline. You have an idea of what the timeline looks like. When you put your goals and your strategies on a timeline, that is when you have a plan. Listen to this one. Planning denies the future of unpleasant surprises and minimizes the impact of eventualities. You see, it's not like we can control outcomes. It's not like we can control what happens. But people who plan and plan well, they tend to respond better to challenges and opportunities. And sometimes by planning, you can see challenges, you can see obstacles before they become a thing, and you can do something about them before they happen. And sometimes when you don't even see them coming, the discipline of planning prepares your reflexes so much that when an opportunity comes that you did not expect, you can seize it. When a challenge comes that you did not expect, you can respond to it properly simply because you have made a habit of planning. This is another statement you would have heard from me before. If it is not documented, it is not a plan. If it is not documented, it is not a plan. You see, the checklist seminar has become that event that many of us go to prepare for a new season, to prepare for a new year. And one of the things we do there is we sit down, and in a practical session, we help you to sit down and to evaluate your year on paper and perhaps to plan the next year on paper. Because if it is not documented, it is not a plan. The reason is because writing clarifies thinking. Okay? Writing clarifies thinking. Sometimes just the habit of putting your thoughts to paper helps you to see that sometimes your plan is not realistic. You don't need anybody to tell you, oh, this one is not going to work. Just by documenting it, seeing it on paper, writing brings your plan to life. And the unrealistic aspects of your plan become vivid the moment you begin to document your plan. But let me warn you as we go ahead. The number one enemy of good planning is mental laziness. Listen, if you don't like to think, you will not be effective with planning. If you don't like to think, you will not be effective with planning. In my humble opinion, an excellent plan is 80% thinking. When you say, oh, I have a plan for the future, you see, documenting the plan is not as tedious, is not as demanding as clarifying your thoughts, seeing the future in your mind, designing the steps in your mind, and then documenting it on paper. Thinking is 80% of good planning. That's why people who are mentally lazy don't plan excellently. People who are mentally lazy don't do what? They don't plan excellently. Now, in the book, the checklist, I identified a 4-step, or better still, I described a 4-step planning process. And that's what I want to share with you tonight. The 4-step planning process. It's very simple and straightforward. Knowing it is not as important as executing it the way I'm sharing it with you. 4 steps you will take when you are planning, and you are very certain you are going to have a good plan. Now, step number one. Step number one is define your objective. Define your objective. First, you be specific, then be detailed. Let me explain myself. So you say to yourself, what am I trying to achieve? If you can capture it in one word, if you can capture it at most in one sentence, that will be good. We are here. We are trying to go there. An example I loved so much was what Bartimaeus said when Jesus said, what do you want me to do for you? The blind man simply said, Rabbi, I want to see. Okay, that's a goal. That's a defined objective. It is specific. I want to see. And that's the first thing you want to do. You want to be clear about where you are going. For somebody, you may say in 2025, we are getting married. That's an objective. In 2025, we are moving houses. That's a defined objective. In 2025, I am starting my business. That's a defined objective. In 2025, I am going for my PhD. That's a defined objective. In 2025, I am changing my car. That's a defined objective. In 2025, I am losing 20 kg. That's a defined objective, and that's where you want to start from. Define your objective. Now, when you have defined it, clearly, then you want to now define it in detail. Okay, define it in detail. Anything you can come up with that describes what you want to achieve. Sometimes in that definition, you may want to put the reason why. Okay, and sometimes you may want to put how you will feel when it is achieved. But that is after you are specific. So you may want to say, in 2025, we are moving houses. Okay? Then you can continue to say, we are moving houses so that my commute from work, to the house can reduce, and so that I can be more effective. Or better still, we are moving houses so that where we live, where we work, and where the children's school can be within the same vicinity. So let's assume you currently live in Ikeja and you work, say, in VI, and you want to move your children's school to Ikoyi. So you can say, you know what? We are moving houses to Ikoyi. I'm moving the children's school to Ikoyi so that home and office and school can be within a 30-mile radius, if that's what you desire. I know the illustration everybody's been expecting me to talk about. In 2025, I am relocating. If that's your objective, fine. After you have defined it, then you may want to say, I'm relocating to this particular country. This is why I want to go there. This is the benefit for me if I go there. Define your objective. Then you move to step number 2. At step number 2, you identify possible means of achieving your objective. Okay? Identify possible means of achieving your objective. You see, at this point is where you now begin to ask questions. You now invite intelligent people. If you work with a team, this is the point where you want to call a meeting of your team to say, you know what, this is what we are doing. What do you think? How do you think we should achieve it? I say this to leaders all the time. A leader does not go to the team and say, what should we do? No, 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 no. A leader must be clear. This is where we are. That is where we are going. But then you go to the people and you ask, how do you think we can get there? You see, the leader must be clear about the vision. But when it comes to the methods of achieving the vision, then you enlist as many people as possible. Proverbs chapter 15 and verse 22 says, plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors, they succeed. This is the point where you want to ask people questions. For example, that person that wants to relocate from Lagos to Canada, you want to get in touch with friends of yours who are already in Canada, maybe who've been there 2 years, 3 years, and you want to get all the information. Don't just ask Google. Don't just check online. For example, you want to change the school of your children. Don't go to the website of the school and allow yourself to be swayed by what the school has to say about herself. You want to find out about 3 to 5 parents who have children in that school who have been there for like 2 years and find out what do they have to say. Okay, your friends who are in another country who are okay, who are settled and who are doing well. Don't seek counsel from people who are not doing well. You see, people will not advise you beyond what they know. Nobody can take you farther than they've ever gone. So when you want to ask advice of people who are succeeding. A jobless man should not take counsel from another jobless man. They cannot help one another. So you want to talk to people who have gone ahead of you. You want to talk to people who are successful in the area of your aspiration. This is the value of mentoring. You want to broker relationships with those who have gone ahead of you so that you can gather as many options as possible. Come up with multiple scenarios. Okay, I want to change my job in 2025. Then you say, I can do it like this. I can do it like this. I can do it like this. I advise people, anytime you want to solve a problem, come up with at least 5 solutions. Anytime you want to solve a problem, come up with at least 5 solutions. I was in a strategy session today and we did something like that. We're planning programs for 2025 and we're thinking of, the kind of musical guests that we can invite. And we came up with a list of several people. We are not going to invite all of them, but one thing you want to do is you want to give yourself options. Okay, you want to give yourself options. You want to move houses. Consider 3 different areas. Okay, consider about 5 different properties. Consider about different price ranges. Give yourself options. That's what you do at step number 2. Identify possible means of achieving your objective. From there, you move to step number 3. Pick out what you consider your best option. Pick what you consider your best option. And this is what you do at this point. So you have a list of 5, options or 10 options, if you will. And then you perhaps pick the first 5, the top 5. From top 5, you can go to top 3. From top 3, you go to top 1. And say, of all of these options, this is the best. This is the one that resonates with me the most. This is the one that holds the highest promise. Okay, and then that's what you go with. But don't forget, be an explorer, not an expert. We talked about that last week. So the reason why you come up with 5 options is when you execute the one that comes across as the best option, if it does not work, you don't give up because you have options. In trying to solve that problem, you came up with many solutions to start with. So when you try the first one and it does not work, you have 4 other ones, you can fall back on. I'm reminded of David when he was going to fight Goliath. He needed only 1 stone, but he picked 5. He needed 1, but he picked 5. Do the same thing. For every problem, this is the best solution, but have 5. Have others in reserve. So that if this does not work, then you go to the next one. That's what you do at step number 3. If you are a person of faith, if you have a functional relationship with God, at step number 3 is where you want to present your options to God. Now, let me correct something. Some people think when there's a problem for them to solve, they just go to God so that God can tell them what to do. You need to understand that it does not give God pleasure when a man does not exercise his imagination. Okay, that's why the Bible says in Proverbs 19 and verse 21, many are the plans in a person's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails. It is to God's glory that you have many plans in your hearts. This is what I've found out, that the best ideas come to people who generate ideas. Okay, God does not answer the question. Does not respond to people who are not asking questions. So you've got to come up with scenarios. You've got to have options. Then you present it to God. I like Genesis chapter 26. The Bible records that there was famine in the land just as it happened in the time of Abraham. And Isaac got up and he went to Abimelech, king of Gerar. He was on his way to Egypt. But when he got to Gerar, God appeared to him. Now think about this. When the famine started, God said nothing. Okay, imagine if he did not move. A lot of times when you don't move, God does not move. When you don't speak, God does not speak. When you are not agitating, God does not respond. That's why it's important that you take responsibility for solving problems, take responsibility for moving your life forward. It is when you are on your way, most of the time, that God responds. That is why you need to start from step 1, step 2. At step 3 is where you say, God, I could do it this way. I could do it this way. I could do it that way. What do you think? And then he gives you the answer of the tongue. He responds and says, okay, do it this way. You know what I found out? Sometimes he says nothing and you just have that peace in your heart. And then you go in the direction that you feel peace about, because it's the glory of God to conceal a matter and the honor of kings to search it out. We must realize that God wants us to explore. So there are some things he won't talk about because he wants you to find them out. That's what happens at step number 3. At step number 4, which is the final step, you now put your goals on a timeline. This is a simple example of a detailed plan of action. Simple example of a detailed plan of action. And you see that it has these columns: what, when, how, and then remarks. What, when, how, and then remarks. So in the column, what is the step you intend to take, what you intend to achieve. For example, somebody says, my what is, I want to lose 20 kg in 2025. That's what's in the, in what. Then when you fix a deadline, so that statement becomes to lose 20 kg by 31st October 2025. Okay, next week Wednesday, I'm going to teach on the power of deadlines. So you've give a deadline, all right? Then you move to the next column. How do you intend to achieve it? Okay, somebody may say by cutting 50% of carbohydrates from my meal, by walking at least 30 minutes, okay, for 5 days every week, and going to the gym 3 times a week. Okay, that's how you want to intend it. You put it there. This is how I intend, okay, to achieve it. Now for remarks, as you pursue that goal, okay, the remarks column is for you to give reports. So you said by 31st of October, by February, you can come and put remarks. I've been going to the gym and I've been taking my walk. I have struggled with cutting my carbohydrates, but even at that, I have dropped about 3 kg between January and February. You put the remarks there, okay? And then you continue. That's it. Simple. Of course, the next goal is a number 2. The next goal is number 3. Let's say, for example, your second goal is to read at least 1 new book, okay, every month. All right? That's what you want to achieve. Then you put when, okay? You put every month at when, so that at the end of January, we can measure. Did you read a whole book? End of February, you can measure. Did you read a whole book? Then how do you intend to achieve? You see, this how is always very important. Okay. At how you say, for example, by reading for at least 60 minutes every day. I will read a whole book in a month by reading at least for 60 minutes every day. That is how. And then in the remarks, you will come back to that column from time to time and you will document your progress. And so on and on and on. That is what it means to put your goal on a timeline. What have we covered tonight? In simple terms, it's a detailed plan of action. What is planning? Planning is bringing the future into the present so that you can do something about it now. And what makes a plan? There are two major things you find in a plan: goals and strategy. A goal is what you intend to achieve. Your strategy is the series of steps you intend to take to achieve your goal. When you put them on a timeline is when you have a plan. And don't forget, if it is not documented, it is not a plan. And quickly, we looked at 4 steps, okay, to planning. 4 steps to planning is: define your objective, identify possible means of achieving your objective. Number 3 is pick out what you consider the best option. And then number 4 is put your goals on a timeline. Put your goals on a timeline. That's where I'm going to stop tonight, because I always like the broadcast to be concise so that those who want to come and watch later won't find it daunting to watch the whole thing. Now, if you have any question, quickly you can put it in the chats before we round up tonight.